Hello everybody, how are you doing today? It's our hope that what we have to say will be beneficial to you. This is the day the Lord has made, so we hope that you will rejoice, be glad in it. And as always, we want to encourage you to do something for the Lord today. Don't just sit there and listen to an inspirational message. Let these things inspire you out and do things for God. Either go meet people, talk to people, invite and introduce them to God, or post things on your Facebook page of a spiritual nature. And you never know who you might encourage to start seeking the Lord. The title of the lesson today is called "The Walls Came Tumbling Down." Some of you might be familiar with the song that's in some of our songbooks of this, which talks about the walls of Jericho coming down. And so let's look at this. And in this study, we're going to notice several biblical instances where the walls came down. And we hope to accomplish several points in this lesson. One, the necessity of the walls coming down, the appearance or impossibility of it ever happening, and then, of course, the application of the lesson in our personal lives. Okay, so our first appearance of walls coming down is found in the book of Joshua. And when they entered the promised land, their first battle, they came upon a well-fortified city. And Jericho was a mighty city with huge walls. And as the children of Israel approached, the inhabitants of the city prepared to defend it. And you can imagine their perplexity when the Israelites marched around one time and left. After 6 days, this process was probably getting on the annoying side, probably more than anything else. The people of Jericho knew that there was absolutely no way that anyone could climb the walls and overcome them. Yet we see that the confidence of the people was in the walls and not in God. So thus, we know what happened. On that seventh day, they marched 7 times around. The trumpets blew and the people's walls fell outward, and thus the Israelites were able to defeat Jericho. All right, the second appearance of a wall coming down happens many years later in the land of Assyria. The great city of Nineveh was a marvel of the world, and its engineering would astound anyone who studied it as well as anyone who physically saw it. While the city was in a period of prosperity and greatness, a prophet of God said that in a few short years, in a very short campaign, that the walls would be breached and the city destroyed. And Nahum, who made that prophecy, was laughed at for making such predictions. Yet, in a few years, it actually did happen. Now, what is so amazing is when we read of the details involving this great city and how the walls were brought down. And once again, the people put their trust in the walls to protect them, and they were not prepared when the walls were destroyed. See, God sent them a message earlier through Jonah to change their ways. And yes, they repented, and God stopped the destruction he had planned for them. And we know Nineveh was a huge city. It had 3 walls around it. The main wall protecting the capital and the king and the castle. And then, of course, we had an outer wall and a much outer wall. And between these walls is where the people lived. This is where they grazed their cattle and planted their crops and did their everyday work. And so it was a huge city. And of course, Jonah mentions the fact that there were 120,000 who did not know their right hand from their left. And now you might say, okay, this might be just children, but we know that there was a lot of people that didn't have a lot of education, but still, we know there's a lot of people here. And it was a huge city. And so, anyway, the walls came down because the people were pretty sure that their walls were protecting them. And they weren't prepared for the walls to be destroyed. The third instance we want to mention is the destruction of the great city of Babylon. See, there's probably never been a city so well built, protected, maintained, and admired in all of human history. See, they had a wall that was so large that it just boggles the mind to comprehend it. Imagine a 20-story building that wrapped continuously around the city the size of Houston, Texas. I mean, along the Great Wall were watchtowers which rose another 1 to 200 feet. It is no wonder that Nebuchadnezzar was filled with pride when he looked at what he had done. And of course, we read that in Daniel chapter 4. And once again, the walls were the downfall of the people. They had so much security and trust in those walls that they only put a handful of guards to keep watch. And the rest of the people enjoyed their festivals. They had a different one each week. And in one particular feast, the king saw handwriting on the wall. Well, Daniel came forth to announce that the kingdom of Babylon was over. And Daniel recorded in chapter 5 that at that very moment Daniel was speaking, the Medes were entering the city underneath the wall in a waterway. And the guards were quickly captured, and it is reported that the king was the only casualty in that encounter. The Medes were not interested in the upkeep of the city and let it go into ruins. So as time went along, the walls were broken and torn down, never to be built up again. And of course, the next city we want to consider in our study is Jerusalem. This happened in the days of Jeremiah. And we read in the book of Jeremiah of the terrible conditions of Jerusalem when Nebuchadnezzar surrounded the city and cut off its supply lines. People got desperate. They start eating their own children and things like that, and killing each other. I mean, it was a very horrible situation, and people were dying from starvation. And once again, we see that people had too much pride to see that a real danger existed. They thought that they were beyond defeat for several reasons. One was because, well, they were the children of God, but also because their great them. These are the walls that Manasseh had built. We're protected by these walls. We're protected, and we don't have to worry about it. Well, see, God promised he would punish them, and the walls would not be any protection. All right, so we know the Nebuchadnezzar breached the walls, sent his army in, captured all of them, put the king's sons to death, and then put out the king's eyes and carried him off to Babylon. And there was just a few were left in the city, and it was deplorable conditions all the way around. The next wall under consideration we read about in the New Testament. This was not a physical wall, but a spiritual one. And so meeting the objective of our sermon goals, we would see the city of this wall coming down. And who was responsible for it happening? In Ephesians 2:13 through 16, he's talking about Christ. Christ is the one who broke down this wall because of what he did for us. He allowed both Jews and Gentiles to become one in the faith. And so in verse 14 says Jesus broke down the barrier of the dividing wall. Now, if we read this context, we find the dividing wall was the law of commandments. Specifically, the commandments that were given through Moses. And it was standing in their way. And so Jesus broke down that wall. Now, all of a sudden, everybody can come. Because, under the Jewish system, all others were excluded. But Christ has included everybody by taking down that wall. The reason for a wall is to keep out those who are not welcome and to protect and keep those who are invited in. And, yeah, we know mentioning of a wall these days is kind of a racist thing to do, so they say. And yet everybody who says we don't need a wall, they're surrounded by walls. And they have their own protection, so they don't have to worry about it. But anyway, we all have confidence in our own dwelling places. Even though our walls may not be as thick as the walls of the Bible, we get into our domain this is our castle, this is our home, this is our dwelling place, and we feel a sense of security in it. And so when someone is robbed in their home, their life seems to be shattered because they feel violated in some way. They're vulnerable. And so what is to be a place of safety where you relax your guard and rest from your labors, it really can be a place of insecurity, of terror, and fear. You know, if someone invades or breaches the confines of that wall that you have protecting you from them. And so, yeah, we know that can happen. And a lot of people, they just can't deal with it anymore. I mean, they move out because someone entered their space that's an unwelcome guest. The last wall that needs to come down is one that you have built between you and God. See, if you think that building a wall will keep him from seeing you, you are wrong. If you think that building a wall will keep him out, you're definitely wrong. If you think that a wall will protect you in Judgment Day, you're going to be lost. I mean, you're going to have to pay the price for that. See, where we place our trust in most cases turns out to be our downfall. For most people, they put their trust in one thing or another. They put it in government. They put it in themselves. They put it in movie stars and sports stars. You know, we're told in the Bible, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. So that's the problem. See, every one of these cities we mentioned, and of course there's many religions have this same thing. They built up walls to separate them from God, and they put their trust on their walls and not upon God. Now, if you have a wall built up, it's time to bring it down. Are you willing for your walls to come tumbling down? Yes, some walls need to be coming down, and yes, we still need to have some walls that, we need to protect ourselves from those who are unwanted. We protect ourselves from evil. But the most important thing is knowing that God is our wall to protect us. And so consider those thoughts. That's our lesson for today. Very simple, but one that we need to consider from time to time. And like I say, share this message with others, help them out, and you do something for the Lord today and reinforce the walls of you allowing God to be your wall. And that's going to help us, but it also will protect us from that which is outside, that which is evil. So you have a good day today. Lord willing, be back again tomorrow with another lesson. Bye-bye for now.